Okay, I just hit the record button and we're going to get started right now. We're going to start off with a little bit of a review for those that either missed last week or are just joining tonight. The name of the series is Death Da'ath, Gateway to True Knowledge of Self. The gateway to the true knowledge of self. And again, we might think that that is a curious title, but at least the first part, death and diath, that's going to be explained. And one of the things that we have to understand is that growing up and living life in the West as opposed to the East, we have a morbid and incomplete understanding of actually what death is. And we're going to take our time going through this because it really, in order to understand how the ancients thought, we're going to have to get into their heads a little bit to take our level of consciousness, our mind, our Western understanding, and try to attempt to decode the Eastern thought and the Eastern mind and Eastern documents. Well, we're not going to get too far. And we haven't gotten too far yet in terms of overall consciousness, overall understanding of uh, the spiritual aspect of even the Bible, of even the Bible. And that is by far an Eastern book, but it's the one that we're most familiar with. So we're going to be using that as a guide, and that actually is what our ancestors intended that to be used as. The Bible is coded as well as the compendium of spiritual or sacred documents. They're coded in such a way that they could be understood as most Western theologians and scholars understand it on a surface level, on a very surface level. And very few people, more so uh, in recent times, but historically, very few people have really uncovered the hidden or esoteric roots of the document known as the Holy Bible. And to begin to understand it, again, is going to take a reversal of mind because we're not taught to think in spiritual terms. One of the basic principles that we're going to have to comprehend is that everything is known through its opposite. And the aspect of the concept of dualism in most Judeo-Christian uh, offshoots, the aspect of duality has been outlawed and demonized. And I'm using the word demonized in a modern context, but an inaccurate context. We're going to get into that. We got into it last week because it's important that we demystify these terms. We pointed out last week that the word demon is not in the Bible. It's not translated in the Bible. And we'll go through that also, because when we start to talk about the esoteric or the hidden or the occult, it raises fear in people in the West because they don't understand this basic principle. They haven't been taught this basic principle that everything is known through its opposite. When we talk about the tree of the knowledge, the tree of knowledge, it was called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, not good or evil. Everything is known through its opposite. So you have to bring the opposite aspect into effect to know anything. How would you know cold if you didn't know hot? So it's not the science of just cold or hot, it's the science of cold and hot, and how these things are reverse mirror images of themselves. So everything is known through its opposite. The Hold on one second. The pictograph here of a tree above and a tree below, which the tree below is the roots, the hidden aspect, the occult aspect. And once you understand that what is below, what is hidden, what is not seen, is always responsible for what is seen. And it gives that which is seen its character, its aspect, all that it is, all that it is. So when you fail to look at the opposite of this, then you only see one side of the picture. And you don't know that these two things, the roots of the tree and the trunk and the branches and the leaves and the flowers, the blossoms, are all predicated upon what goes on here first. And we have to understand the aspect of what came first. What came first. And generally, what came first is unseen and is unknown. We are creatures and captives of time, number one, and primarily captives of recent times. We make the mistake of thinking that what is now, represented as, in this case, what is above, was always here and is unrelated to what came before. And a lot of times we don't know what came before. And that only gives us what? Just a surface knowledge. So the actual text of this maxim, as above, so below. Everything is known through its opposite. As above, so below. It was translated by Dennis H. Hawk from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus. And what it originally said was this: that which is below corresponds to that which is above. And to put it in the language of the opposite, that, let's say, which is cold corresponds to that which is hot. That which is good corresponds to that which is evil. Remember, it was the knowledge of good and evil. So it's cold and hot, high and low, above and below, east and west, north and south. That which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below. To accomplish what? The miracle of the one thing. The miracle of the one thing, which is the one thing which is total knowledge of a thing. Thus, whatever happens on any level of reality, physical, emotional, or mental, also happens on every other level. We must understand and comprehend that. Whatever happens on any level of reality, physical, emotional, or mental, also happens on every other level. Now, this aspect of physical, emotional, or mental, I like that they put it in there because this is going to be the key. These things are going to be the key for you achieving a knowledge of self. We'll get into that later. And it's a very simple process once you understand it. And I will give unto them the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever shall thou bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And also, this is talking about this maxim that which is on earth corresponding to that which is in heaven, that which is below corresponding to that which is above. And this is the template for creating magic, and I'm using that word again advisedly, in your life. To a more familiar word, and maybe a more innocuous word, is miracles. But miracles, I don't like to use that because we automatically, we're trained, I should say, to give credence, or to understand rather, that the prime source of all miracles is God. And again, we're going to be straightening out this term God. This is such a crippling and debilitating word, and a lot of people they couldn't even explain what it is that is. What it is that means, or what it is. Big G or small g. So we're going to skip forward. We had talked about the tree and the aspect of what came first. All right. And since we're, as Wayland said, time farers, that we move and walk on this realm through time, we must have an understanding of what came first, because it's going to aid us in our look at certain scriptures. All right. Gil Scott Heron said the first revolution is when you change your mind and how you look at things. Everything is perception. Everything is perception. And we're going to look at some things that are commonplace in many cases and see deep spiritual meaning in them, and especially as it relates to signs, symbols, hieroglyphs, pictographs, cartoons, movies, caricatures, characters, etc., and so on. These things have deep, deep spiritual meaning and power. But until you change your mind and change your perception, you'll never see nor understand nor experience what it is that I'm talking about. First revolution is when you change your mind and how you look at things. It has to do with perception, and see that there might be another way to look at it that you have not been shown. And we're going to show you hundreds and hundreds of examples from ancient texts, familiar ancient texts, and from popular culture. One of the first things you're going to have to train your mind to do is think the opposite. And this is going to lead us into our further discussion on death, what we started talking about on death. You must think the opposite. And once you, it's going to be simple. Once you come to an understanding of what it actually is, you'll be able to change your thinking on death and understand that it is not a morbid subject. Not at all. It's empowering. One of the scripture verses as it relates to symbols that we want to look at is actually a scripture passage rather, is Psalm 74, 3 through 10. And again, we went over this before, but we're going to go over it again for the benefit of those that are just joining us and that might have missed the introduction. Lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy have done wickedly in the sanctuary. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. Now, here's the key scripture or passage. They set up their ensigns for signs. A man was famous according as he had lifted up the axes upon the thick trees. But now they break down the carved work thereof at once with axes and hammers. They have cast fire into the sanctuary, into thy sanctuary. They have defiled by casting down the dwelling place of thy name to the ground. They said in their hearts, let us destroy them together. They have burned up all the synagogues of God in the land. We see not our signs. There is no more any prophet. There is neither is there among us any that knoweth how long. O God, how long shall the adversary reproach? Shall the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? So, what we have to caution ourselves against right away is thinking that this is in response to an actual historic event, a specific historic event that had occurred in time. It does somewhat, but not according to the context, the historical context of what the Bible lays forth. And I'll tell you why. In this verse here, they use the word synagogues. All right? That is a Greek word, not a Hebrew word. This is actually a sign for us. When you see something out of context here, it is actually a sign. Synagogues, something that did not exist within the historical context that this was supposedly written in. So it's a sign. Synagogues. It is not a Hebrew word, and a synagogue, something called a synagogue, did not exist. So that is telling you that none of this should be taken literally in terms of a time context. That this word synagogue is hinting at something else. And sure enough, when we go into the Hebrew, the original tongue, and we see that the word synagogue is the word, they show the word moad, but it's actually moadim, plural, moadim, synagogues, but it doesn't translate as synagogues again. That's just the word that they used, and that is a sign. That is a sign. Moad or moadim means a set, appointed, designated, meaning predetermined or prearranged sign or signal. So what I'm telling you is that with knowledge, this is not anything that is sinister, that they use the word synagogues. It is a sign that they used within the context, the overall context of Psalm 74, 3 and 10, to give you they were giving you a set, appointed, designated, predetermined, or prearranged sign or signal. And this serves as a template, if you can understand me, for translating on a higher level or decoding on a higher level passages of Scripture. When something looks amiss, that is a predetermined or prearranged. It's not a mistake in many cases. It's not a mistake. There are a lot of mistakes in translation. But when you see something this out of context or something that just does not fit, that is a prearranged or predetermined sign or signal for you to look further, for you to look deeper. And again, as we look deeper at this, look, synagogues doesn't belong there, historically speaking, in terms of time. So we look and we know and we see that it does not refer to any physical structure. Neither does sanctuary. This is talking about something within you. And that is the key, that everything is going to point back to something that is in you, that was placed in you, that is eternal, that is divine. And things such as this is kind of like a keystroke on a computer. When you put in the right code, it activates something. And that's what these prearranged signs and signals are designed to do. I hope everyone can understand that. If there's any questions or is any confusion on that, we'll address that now. And I'll wait. Anybody need any clarity on that?
I have a question only because of my interpretation I've had about that specific verse in the past.
Okay.
Because the way I've interpreted that, it was that those passages are about mind control.
Okay. How so?
Well, because all of the symbolism and the sign or signal of God have been desolated in the land. So therefore, we've already been controlled, and the idea of the God within has been destroyed, and new signs and signals and ensigns have been put up for us to look elsewhere instead of inward.
Okay, that is absolutely true, what you just said. But let me explain something. It doesn't matter. The original sign, the original sigil, the original meaning doesn't go anywhere. It's like the root of a tree. You can change the top to whatever you want to. You can prune the tree. You can make it look like, you know, uh, woodland creatures. Do you understand?
Right.
You
You
know,
can.
with your landscaping skills, but that still does not affect the root and the original meaning and purpose of that tree. That
Right. Well, what I was getting at was that the verse was warning us about how this has happened.
well, it like I said, it is in a way, but
Like,
you
but
must
it's a.
understand. Let me explain.
Go
We
ahead.
A lot of times we look for something insidious, but if we understand foreknowledge, see, this is again this misunderstanding of about God. And if God is supposed to be all knowing, then it doesn't allow for any mistakes. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And this is what I'm saying that, and we'll get to this scripture verse too, because that's the one we're going to go. That even if there is an enemy, even if there is an enemy out there that has, and we know that there has been, but there's a scripture verse in the book of Revelation says that God has put it in their minds to accomplish his will. So no matter what they did, this is what I'm saying. When you understand the power of what this is and how I just demonstrated that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know that they weren't talking about synagogues. I know they weren't talking about that signal. What I'm saying is I'm giving a testimony that that signal is there, and it activated something in me. It might not activate something in everyone, but I know that it worked. And I get this in the context that it is. That's what I'm trying to explain. You get me?
Yeah, and I completely understand that. I was looking at it as the sheer idea. Part of it is the warning that you're going to be misled, and that what you're saying is true, that it's still in there. You can't change what is
Correct.
truth. All you can do is look at the signs they've set up and believe they're false signs to be true.
Absolutely. And that's and here and I'm giving credence to that because that's what the majority of people will read this and understand it just literally. They won't even get to they won't even notice the sign that is there. So yes, that mind control, and I've read it beforehand dozens, hundreds of times and didn't get it. But what I'm saying now is that they can't hide it because these are set times. It wasn't meant for me to get it and read it 10 years ago, read it and get it 10 years ago. But now it's a prearranged sign or a signal so I can point it out. So that verifies what it's saying in here. You get me?
I understand.
Okay, we're gonna go on. But your point is valid, correct. These things, like I said, it's it was it insidious? Yes, but does it matter? Not really, because we're talking
And
about it. We're talking about it now. We're
right,
pointing
and
it
that's
out
what
right now.
dovetails back into the popular culture and how the signs and the ensigns and all that stuff are still there. They're just being used for them and not for everyone.
Absolutely. But let me ask you a question. Even through
Yeah.
the popular culture and all of the, you got it, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So this,
And that's the context of which you're speaking here. I saw, there was a predetermined thing that was going to
so
trigger me to start seeing this,
absolutely.
and I've been seeing it ever since.
Absolutely. So that's the power of that. I get exactly what you're saying. And we agree on that. So let's move forward. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. That's the word da'ath. Da'ath. That goes back to the title, Death Da'ath. Our people are destroyed through lack of da'ath, lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, da'ath, I will also reject thee. All right. Now, this is going to put this here at the beginning because this is going to be curious. It's going to create a contradiction in Genesis because the tree of knowledge was the tree of da'ath, which the same God that's supposed to be speaking about his people told the people not to eat from. So we have a dilemma. But if we don't understand things like the ancients, like the Eastern ancients understood them, it's a dilemma and it's a contradiction and it's a paradox. But paradoxes are meant to be solved. And the only way you can understand the Bible is to think opposite of the way you've been taught and to understand that everything is known through its opposite. Things have been flipped. And to your point, mind controlled, things have been flipped, Waylon, in our minds. So we have to be prepared to look at things differently. This is the whole point. So again, we're going to have to know ourselves to understand that everything that the Bible is talking about, everything that the ancients were talking about, what and how they were instructing us was for us to go inward, not outward. Again, that is that is the opposite of how most people in the West, how most people in the world, for that matter, think. They view things as being outside of themselves. But the one thing that we said and that we'll continue to emphasize is that your entire existence takes place within yourself. What you're looking at now is on a screen inside of you. So we have to understand that. That is something that is very deep. But to acclimate yourself to that type of thinking, you just have to train your mind over and over again in the opposite way that the educational system, that the religious system, that the social system, that the cultural system, especially of the West, have entrained you and taught you how to think. Is there
And
someone that wants to speak at this time?
well, there's several pop culture references to the screen inside the mind too that might help people uh, understand it. There's a really common trope called brain in a jar,
Okay,
and and I'm sure people have seen this where it ends up that the villain or the good guy or whatever is just a brain in a jar.
correct.
And sometimes and for most of the time, whoever it is doesn't even know they're just a brain in a jar, because reality is recreated through electronic impulses into their brain, and they have no way of telling the difference as long as they have a way to receive the electronic impulses.
Correct.
So
So
that's
yeah, and we're going to give more and more examples of that, but that will suffice for now. The
right on.
the method again, most people, and this would serve as the tree, the part of the tree that is above ground. All right. Most people, and I was doing it wrong. Most people just have a surface understanding, and therefore a surface concept of spiritual or so-called sacred knowledge, sacred doctrine. Again, the Bible being the most familiar. And that is what is referred to as pashat, which just means on the surface, just a straight line understanding. And therefore, they interpret scriptures like the one that we just decoded on the surface. And they'll go to their liner notes in the Bible and says they'll give them a timeline that during that time, the sanctuary, they must be referring to this time period, and give you a whole erroneous history of Psalms 74, 3 through 10. And most people, Bible doctrines, Bible scholars, doctrinarians, they're at this level, even the best of them. The next level of understanding or interpretation is remez. Remez, and it means hints or deep allegoric or hidden or symbolic meaning beyond just the literal sense. Now, the hint was the word synagogue, all right, that it was out of context. And again, uh, the usual Bible intellectuals will, this is as far as they'll go with it. They'll say, well, you see, uh, the uh, the Bible translators, they changed certain words because they didn't have an understanding of the language, and something is amiss. Something is amiss. And it's usually a conspiratorial type theory that is derived, and they don't go beyond that. They wouldn't look they would look at the word synagogue being in context and not necessarily go to the Hebrew word for the correct understanding. That happens on the next level, drash, drash. And drash, we get the word thresh or thrash from there. So you sense that there's a kernel, edible kernel in the wheat stalk, but you know you have to remove it from the shaft. And so you thresh it. You dig a little deeper. You work a little deeper for the understanding. And you inquire and you seek beyond the hint. So that you're digging a little bit deeper. You're outside of the social confines. You're outside of the religious and denominational confines. You're outside even the Western traditional confines, and you're searching elsewhere to find and to inquire and to seek. This is knock and the door shall be open. Seek and you shall find, etc. and so on. That's the drash level. The fourth level, but by no means the final level, is the sod level. And sod is actually spelled this letter here, the first Hebrew letter in sod, actually should be it should be transliterated with a C. And most people say, well, it'll be misunderstood that it's not a soft C, it will be cod. No, it will be code. And that is what it's supposed to mean, that you've cracked the code. You've been given the code letters or the code numbers. It's pronounced with a long O as in sod, but it's actually spelled with a C. And then we use it to mean secret, occult, or hidden, or esoteric, mystical meaning, as given through inspiration or revelation. Now and only now are you ready to step into the spiritual area and have a spiritual understanding. But you've just been given the code. And that's just like being given a passcode to a phone. It's only good until you punch those numbers in. What's the password? What's the code? You can only enter the building. Yeah, you have knowledge of the code, but then you must apply it. That's where wisdom comes in. Wisdom is the proper application of knowledge. And until you get to the fourth level, you don't have any knowledge. You're on a journey to knowledge. And even on the soul level, you have not been inspired. You have not seen the revelation. It's not been revealed to you. You have to put the code in, and it requires knowledge. It requires the proper application of the knowledge. That is the soul level. And when you put all of these different levels together, or the first letters, it's an acrostic, PRDS. And it's the Hebrew word pardes, or orchard, is a Persian or is of Persian origin and appears several times in the Bible. Persian is also the source of the word paradise, which entered English via Latin and Greek. So that word pardes is orchard, and it should cause Bible scholars to think of trees. And again, it is connected to this tree with its roots below ground, hidden. That's the sod area there, that which is hidden, not revealed. Most people are eating the fruit of this tree here. the tree that is hidden. Now, that is the real fruit. That is the forbidden fruit. And the reason it's forbidden is because most people can't access it, and that they won't access it because their level of consciousness only allows them to go to certain depths, as well as social constraints and concerns, cultural constraints and concerns, religious, denominational constraints and concerns, meaning you're believing this or believing that, or not believing this or not believing that, and you cannot get past this level, or past the first three levels, or even past the first four levels, because you're constrained by human concerns. Passageway beyond the fourth level requires a divine passport. In other words, and to get the passport, it requires you to be as the gods. In other words, be a god, be divine. So now we reflect on the story in the garden, or the orchard, with the tree in the midst. And the command was, you can eat from all of the other trees, but of the forbidden tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you must not eat, for the day you eat thereof, you shall experience death. So we have the word knowledge, da'ath, and death right there in front of us. But no one has inquired beyond this level, the surface level of the scriptures, to understand that knowledge, da'ath, and death both referring to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Da'ath and death are related. And they brought them together parabolically, in a parable, in a story. But the serpent comes along in the story and says, and apparently contradicts the God of the Bible. You shall not surely die. For the gods know that in the day you eat thereof, you shall become as them, knowing good and evil. In other words, what do we say? Knowing or accomplishing the miracle of the one thing. That's how gods think. They don't think dualistically. They see things as a whole. They see them fully, not partially. So we have the statement, enlightenment or enlightened minds refers to the full comprehension of a situation, of a subject, of an object, of a concept, not just seen in its aspects, but seen fully. So we're going to fast forward. Any questions so far? Did we lose anyone? Feel free to open your mics up. Take your phones off mute. Let me know. All right, we're going to move forward. Okay, Christine.
I saw it
Huh?
in the chat. It says, can you hear me?
Yes, I hadn't been looking at the chat, but go ahead.
To go within means to you do it through breathing and meditation.
That is one technique. That is one technique, but what we want to understand is that everyone is different. Everyone is
Okay.
different. And there are so many paths to that one thing. Some people can automatically do it. Some people can they need to control it through breath. I know that was a way for me to become enlightened and to see certain things was in a meditative state. But there are many ways. But one of the things that we have to understand, one of the maxims that we should remember, where attention goes, energy flows. Where attention goes, energy flows. Energy follows attention. So what it is you're focused on, if you're focused on, if your concept is that the world is outside of you rather than inside of you, the universe, the multiverse, then you'll be focusing attention, thus energy, outward. But if you have a concept, if you trained yourself that everything is happening within you, and this is so empowering, and we're going to talk about power because this is the important thing. This I don't want you to leave here just with a bunch of concepts, mental concepts. What I want to give you is practical steps to wield power, to be able to focus and to change the circumstances of your self first, and then of your world, of your universe, of your multiverse. But it all is mind and the universe is mental. All is mind and the universe is mental. So again, breathing techniques, meditation helps, but you can be doing the breathing techniques by the book and still your mind is focused on things outside yourself. Still your mind is focused on something that is higher than you. You with me? So yeah,
Yes.
all those things are good, but train your mind, first of all, to the concept that everything exists within you. You with me?
Okay.
All right.
Yes, got it.
All right. Where attention goes, energy flows. If there be light, then there is darkness. If cold, heat. If heat, depth. If height, rather depth. If solid, fluid. If hard, soft. If rough, smooth. If calm, tempest. If prosperity, adversity. If life, death. He discovereth things out of darkness. Darkness was and is always first. We said that we want to concentrate on what is first, what is primal, what is primary. So it is what occurs, and if we use our example as a tree, it's what occurs in the darkness of the soil that is primary. The growth goes downward first and then upward, and bringeth out light the shadow of death. So we must understand this concept of the shadow self. We actually must understand the concept of self first. And Carl Jung, aided powerfully by the ancient ancestors. And if you don't believe that, see, a lot of people think that Carl Jung was this brilliant man that uh, was so brilliant he set up and pontificated and uh, 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 gave this great dissertation all by his lonesome, by his own intellect, on Jungian psychology and on the different aspects of self, the id, ego, and the superego. We're going to prove that those came from darkness. And very quickly, we'll go back over the 7 sermons of the dead and how Carl Jung developed his psychological approach. 7 sermons of the dead by Carl Gustav Jung, 1916. In Memoirs, Dreams, Reflection, Jung gives one account of how the Septem Sermones, the 7 sermons, came to be written. The Sunday referred to below is probably Sunday, the 30th of January, 1916. It began with a restlessness, but I did not know what it meant or what they wanted of me. There was an ominous atmosphere all around me. I had a strange feeling that the air was filled with ghostly entities. Then it was as if my house began to be haunted. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, the front doorbell began ringing frantically. Then there was no one in sight. Now remember, this is 1916. You would pull on the doorbell that was on a little string, not run up and hit a buzzer. I was sitting near the doorbell, not only heard it, but saw it moving. We all simply stared at one another. The atmosphere was thick, believe me. Then I knew that something had to happen. The whole house was filled as if it were a crowd present, crammed full of spirits. They were packed deep right up to the door. The air was so thick that it was scarcely possible to breathe. As for myself, I was all aquiver with a question. For God's sake, what in the world is this? He didn't even know what was going on. Then they cried out in chorus, we have come back from Jerusalem where we found not what we sought. That is a very, very, very profound statement there, especially if you studied with the African Hebrew Israelites or any other Hebrew group. We have come back from Jerusalem where we found not what we sought. That is the beginning of the 7 sermons, memories, dreams, reflection, page 90 to 91. And I'm going to skip down. Near the end of his life, Jung spoke to Anil Ajafi about the 7 sermons and explained this, that the discussions with the dead in the 7 sermons form the prelude to what we would subsequently communicate to the world, and that their content anticipated his later books. And Carl Jung, what people don't know, that he wrote on the chakra system. He wrote on Kundalini energy. All of these things that are not in, that would not fall under the heading of modern science. This was ancient esoteric knowledge that was communicated to him. And once you go back and connect his writings, it will connect all the way back, the things that he wrote about, all the way back to ancient Kemet and the ancient Western and African and Asian spiritual systems. The discussions with the dead formed a prelude to what was subsequently we will communicate to the world, and that their content rather anticipated his later books. Quote, the years when I pursued inner images were the most important time of my life. Again, inward, go inward. Everything else is to be derived from this. Everything else is to be derived from this. It began at that time, and later details hardly matter anymore. My entire life consisted in elaborating what had burst forth from the unconscious, that hidden area of the mind, and flooded me like an enigmatic stream and threatened to break me. That was the stuff and material for more than only one life. Everything later was merely an outer classification, the scientific elaboration, and the integration into life. But the numinous beginning, which contained everything, was then. So we have to give credence to, again, that which is hidden, that which is forbidden. The Bible tells you don't talk to the dead. The dead know nothing. Nothing can be further from the truth. We have the whole basis of Jungian psychology deriving from necromancy, what the Bible refers to as necromancy or the dark arts. And Jung, by his own words, didn't know what was going on, but later was able to adjust, and through the guidance of these so-called dead spirits, which in effect were our ancestors, passing this knowledge on to a custodian. Why? To late for a what? Predetermined, prearranged, preset time period. We clear. A set, appointed, designated, predetermined, prearranged sign or signal. And once we go into these things, we would recognize as we connected inwardly and through our DNA and through our ancestors, understand that this knowledge was our knowledge. And Carl Jung was merely a custodian of that and a conduit for that particular knowledge. You can go back, and we will go back during the course of this class series and connect all of these things. In Jungian psychology, shadow or shadow aspect may refer to one, an unconscious aspect of the personality which the conscious ego does not identify in itself. In short, the shadow is the dark side or the hidden side or the occult side or the esoteric side, the roots of the tree. And again, there was only one tree actually in the garden. Because one tends to reject or remain ignorant of the least desirable aspects of one's personality, that is, those aspects that don't conform to, align with societal, cultural, religious, etc., expectations and norms, the shadow is largely negative. Or two, the entirety of the unconscious, that is, everything of which a person is not fully conscious. Therefore, if they're not fully conscious of it, it's hidden to them. There are, however, positive aspects which may also remain hidden in one's shadow, especially in people with low self esteem, anxieties, and false beliefs. To know yourself, you must accept your dark side. It is the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge of good and evil that is contained in all of us. Contrary to a Freudian definition of shadow, therefore, the Jungian shadow can include everything outside the light of consciousness and may be positive or negative. And for sure, it's positive and negative. Everyone carries a shadow, Jung wrote, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is, the more hidden it is. It may be in part one's link to more primitive animal instincts, which are superseded during the early childhood by the conscious mind. So when when Jesus or Yeshua said that we must become as a child or must become as children, this is the science that was being propagated. Get back to that early childhood state and delve into the darkness. Carl Jung stated the shadow to be the unknown dark side of the personality. According to Jung, the shadow in being instinctive and irrational. Now, see, we think that these are negative qualities, especially rational, the aspect of irrational. But this is our power to be instinctive and irrational. Irrational, rationality is thinking inside and moving inside the box, inside the enclosed place, inside the garden. Adam and Eve had to become instinctive and irrational in order to free themselves from the box that they were put in. And believe me, that garden, gan means enclosed place. Gan is garden in Hebrew, and it means the enclosed place. So they had to become irrational. That is high science, not a Bible tale being told. It is an instructional manual on how to transition from being a mere human, a mere person, to a divine being. It is an instructions on how to tap into your very soul. According to Jung, the shadow, in being instinctive and irrational, is prone to psychological projection, in which a perceived personal inferiority is recognized as a perceived moral deficiency in someone else. Jung writes that if these, and this is how individuals that really think like this are prevented from actually knowing and understanding themselves. Jung writes that if these projections remain hidden, the projection making factor, the shadow archetype, then has a free hand and can realize its object if it has won or bring about some other situation characteristic of its power. And he's saying that power is here. These projections insulate and harm individuals by acting as a constantly thickening veil of illusion between the ego and the real world. Jung also believed that in spite of its function as a reservoir for human darkness, or perhaps because of this, the shadow is the seat of creativity. That is what sets apart a God, a divine being, from a mere human. Gods and divine beings are creators. And if you want to create your own universe, you must delve into this reservoir of darkness. So that for some time it may be the dark side of his being, his sinister shadow represents the true spirit of life as against the arid scholar. So we're going to delve into this inner self right now. And again, we don't want to leave here just with more concepts, more of other people's quotes and other people's ideas memorized or recited with just a little more creativity, a little more cleverness. We're not about that. This class is about power. First Corinthians 4:20 said the kingdom of God is not in word. It's not about what you can say or how much you can recite what you know, what you've read in other books, but it's in power. It's in power. And we're going to quote another scripture, and I'm going to quote it first. And my speech and my preaching was not with enticing words of man's wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and power. I'm saying that word demonstration, because it is used properly here. Of the Spirit and of power, that your faith should not stand in the wisdom of man, but in the power of God. Again, that word demonstration is a moad. It is a set sign, a set signal that has, as Wayland emphasized earlier, has been hidden in and veiled in a recent negative light or connotation. But we're going to go right to the etymological dictionary, right to any dictionary, and we're going to understand what this means. Because someone wants to keep you human. They don't want you to tap into that divine power, because they said something evil is preventing you from doing it. Something dangerous, something that can cause death. Demon, a noun, came into the language circa 1200, so it could not have been in the Bible. If we go by the timeline that people give us, that it was the first or second century that the so-called Acts and the so-called history of the Bible in the Levant, in the so-called Middle East, was recounted and was being uh, recorded, or at least accumulated to be recorded. So again, it could not be in the Bible. It is not a thought or a concept that was in. And you're going to see what they did to further, quote unquote, demonize this word. From late Latin, daemon, spirit. From Greek, daemon, deity or divine power. No negative connotation. And then they put in something that I can prove is an add-on. Lesser God. Lesser God. No such thing. You either God or you God. Ain't no small g, capital G, small g. You're a God or you're a God. It ain't no, a man is a man. Ain't no lesser man. Conceptually, a man is a man. Absolute thought. A God is a God. Absolute thought. A guiding spirit or a tutelary deity, meaning a protective deity, sometimes including souls of the dead. Now that goes back to what the Jungian experience, to Carl Jung's, the souls of the dead. Now, again, one's genius, one's lot, or one's fortune. If you have not accessed the genius in your life, well, you know why. It's the demonization of this word. If you have not reached your lot in life, it is the demonization of this word. If you have not attained your fortune in life, it is because of the demonization of this word. Don't touch. And we have a beliefism that never or very seldom reaches or puts power within our reach. To the contrary, our beliefisms, and I think we would all attest to it, have made us weak and dependent on something that is outside of ourselves. Daemon means the divider or provider of fortunes or destinies. The divider or provider of fortunes or destinies. You still have not seen a negative connotation. And this was cut and pasted directly from the etymological dictionary, from the root da, to divide. It also says it's one's genius. And we think of the character Speed Racer, the cartoon character. He was a speed demon. He was in that, what was it, Waylon, the Mach 5? And he could make that thing, it was a part of him. He,
The Mach 5.
yeah, it was the Mach 5. And he was a demon. They said he was a demon on the track. He was a speed demon. Didn't mean that he was going around possessing people. Didn't mean he was going around cursing people. It meant he was a genius at what he was doing. And it's connected to the word genie. Again, a later uh, inception within the language, but it carried the same meaning as a protective, not a harmful spirit, but a tutelary spirit, a protective spirit.
You know,
Go
there is
ahead.
a funny sideways connection to from Speed Racer to the Matrix movies.
Go ahead.
The Wachowski brothers that made the Matrix movies were huge fans of Speed Racer.
Okay.
And in the Matrix movies, there's the bullet time. You know, once Neo starts realizing his power, you know, and he can start dodging the bullets.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And all of the scenes where he is, you know, basically tapping into the Matrix and using the Matrix for his own benefit are derived from that opening scene in Speed Racer, where Speed Racer hops out of the car and time freezes and the camera pans around him.
Correct. Oh yeah, right.
And that's the whole origin of how they decided to interpret Neo controlling himself in the Matrix.
Now they use that camera technique several times, and it's especially in the second Matrix movie when he's fighting, and that is an animation, correct?
So, yep, it's just computer animated.
Okay, wow.
So it's all kind of intermingled, and you
Yes,
know
it is.
it's kind of funny how it you know you can see it if you're trying to look at the bigger picture,
That's
and you can
correct.
see how either these people are esoterically minded or they're just tapped into the source and they're just spewing out esoteric wisdom unknowingly.
Well, they've definitely tapped into that shadow self by using, see, these symbols are designed to do it. And if you create something like a speed racer, again, you've tapped into that unconscious, right? Because they
Yep.
said that the shadow is the seat of creativity. That was one of the claims that Jung said. So absolutely, man.
And then they those same guys made a live action Speed Racer movie as well, which is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, I saw that as well. It was pretty good.
But I figured it was relative, so I figured I'd tell you.
No, that absolutely relative. So again, this aspect of genie related to genius, one's genius, speed racer being a demon on the track, meaning nothing, uh, nothing derogatory, nothing denigrating, just meaning that he was really good at what he did. And again, it is linked to the French translation of Arabian Nights and rendered Jinni, the singular of jinn. And jinn below here came in again, of course, based on what we understood how it entered the language in the 1680s, 30 years later. From the Arabic jinn, it is a collective plural, demons, spirits, angels, which are all synonymous. The proper singular is Jenny, which appears in English occasionally as Jinne, 1840, some 300 years later, but more frequently as genie. Similarity to genius is accidental. I really doubt that it is accidental. We just proved just through and see again, they count when they make statements like this, they count on people not doing their homework. So it's not accidental. We just traced it. It's not accidental. Dash Jeny, Jenny, word forming element meaning Genesis. Again, all of this is pointing us back to the Genesis narrative. Origin, meaning that we have to go back to first things to understand what is primary. Mode of production. The roots are the mode of production of what you see in the trunk, the branches, the twigs, and the leaves. Forming corresponding abstract nouns to words in gen, from the French genie, modern Latin genia, from Greek genea, from genes, born, produce. This is why we know that these souls of the dead are the ancestors. That's all that means. The in the word progeny, that means offspring. The form and compounds of genos, from the PIE root, gene, to give birth, beget, the derivatives referring to procreation, familial and tribal groups. The ancestors, the ancestors, the ancestors. So if a people didn't want you to contact your ancestors, which are the source of all knowledge and wisdom, they would just demonize the ancestors in creating a doctrine called the fall of man in the Genesis that says the reason why you're in the condition you are today is because your ancestors sinned, that all of them, the lot of them, were evil, and that your prime progenitor in progenitive agent, rather, in Adam, so to speak, sinned, and everybody that came before you are sinners, less than. See, that's what you get when you stay human. But the divine deities, they don't worry about none of that. They're outside of that box. Used with dominion, where we get the word dominate or dominion. In Christian Greek, listen, this is where the switch comes. Translations and Vulgate for God of the heathen, an unclean spirit. Now you'll find that in the Bible. Jewish authors earlier had employed the Greek word in this sense. Why would Hebrew employ Greek? It's all out of context. Historically, culturally, and from an etymological standpoint. So this is where the switch came, much later, that the Jewish authors, and they're not giving dates now, employed the Greek word in this sense, using it to render Sheddim lords or idols in the Septuagint. And but the Septuagint came earlier, and Matthew 8:31 as daemones, again using a culturally and historically, chronologically out of context word, inserting that in the text, and then changing the meaning of the word. Translated as deerfold in the Old English, fiend or devil in the Middle English. Another Old English word for this was hell's night, literally hell night. And again, that word right there is going to be very instructive as we move forward. The original mythological sense is sometimes written daemon for purposes of distinction. The demon of Socrates was a daemonion, a divine principle, or what? Inward oracle. His accusers and later the church fathers, however, represented this otherwise. So we see how this word was changed and literally demonized, denigrated, made negative, made evil. But my speech and my preaching was not with enticing words of man's wisdom, but in demonstrating the spirit and of power. The only way that you can do it is connect to that darker reservoir of power. We're going to talk about that aspect when we go over the id, the ego, and the superego. These aspects of your personality or your personhood. That your faith should not stand in the wisdom of man, but the power of God. Most people are just they just want to they just want to hear enticing words. They just want to hear something new, and their life is torn up. They got books and books and books, can quote out of most of them, but cannot demonstrate the power. We're not going to leave this series without being able to demonstrate. What are the proof of your words, your wise words? The proof that something is true. But we don't, in Western society, we don't require that anymore. We've been dumbed down spiritually, dumbed down in terms of consciousness. From the old French demonstration, or directly from Latin, and it means to prove, to point out, to indicate, to demonstrate, to establish. It's a divine omen, a wonder. See also monster, demonstrate, demonstrate. See also monster. These things have become negatively uh, uh, connotated and denotated in many senses. So we don't want to leave here with a bunch of new words. We want to leave here being able to demonstrate, to prove that those words are true because of their outcomes, because of the results that they cause. So we're going to look and understand how the Bible demonstrates that the evening, that darkness was first, even in the rendering of a day, what we call a day or a yom, it follows the set pattern. Darkness, night first. Remember this word, hell night. All right? Hell night was connected to demon, and we're going to see how this hell night was made into an evil figure as well. Uh, all of this talk of the light side and the dark side should get you to thinking about, again, things in popular culture. And that would be Star Wars, which makes this clear distinction between the dark side and the light side. And the Hell Knight is this figure, Darth, Da'ath, Death, Vader. Darth, Da'ath, Death, Vader. Meditate on that. Understand the connection. But in my opinion, this is the baddest mofo in Star Wars right here. My hero. Does he have the power?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. He demonstrates the power when and where he wants to. He's
And how?
he's unconstrained. He is instinctive. So that word evening is the word erev, erev, and it means sunset or the sun, S-O-N, setting. The action of hardening, soot, what settles, to sit, sedentary, to fix firmly, to found, to start. Now, all of this is going to take us back now to the Egyptian or the Kemetan netters. They were not gods, although when I cut and paste, I just leave God in there. They were called netters. They were not gods. They did not bow down and worship other gods and idols. We saw that this entered in, they didn't put the date now, but it entered into the language lexicon much later. And it was Christian Greek translators that changed it. Also, the Jewish authors employing the Jewish authors earlier employing Greek words in what was supposed to be Hebraic translations. So they're playing games here. So we must understand the history of this. Must understand the history of this. And this aspect of a god, again, an Egyptian god, these were netchers. They were not gods of the heathen. That is a false concept. From the Greek Seth or Set. See also Sith Lord. And Waylon, if you're still on, make this connection again to Star Wars and the Sith Lords and tell us who the Sith Lords are and were, if you're still there. Waylon might have stepped away from his
Yep.
computer for me.
Yep.
You
Yep.
hear?
Apparently my computer was experiencing some slowdown or something. I kept unmuting and muting myself. Well, in Star Wars, the Sith are an enigma. In the ancient days, the Jedi Order embraced both the light and dark teachings.
Say that again.
In the beginning, the Jedi Order embraced both the light and dark teachings.
So they had knowledge of both good and evil, so to
Correct.
speak. All right. Go ahead.
Then the Great Schism happened, and when the Great Schism happened, the light-sided Jedi's decided that this stuff was too forbidden, too powerful, should not be trusted in the hands of men. So a war broke out between the light-sided Jedi and the dark-sided Jedi. They weren't even Sith yet.
They were not even called Sith yet.
Right.
Okay.
So then, of course,
they were both Jedi.
Correct.
They were just one.
And Sith is the inhabitants of a few planets in one corner of the galaxy.
Okay.
And since the ancient Republic had no presence there, when the schism happened, the Dark Jedi fled to the Sith space.
Okay.
And the Jedi, the Light Jedi, were happy to let them go. because they were light Jedi. They really didn't believe they should kill them.
Oh,
So they just let them leave. And they settled on these Sith worlds, and the Sith were a humanoid reptilian race.
oh, reptilian.
Yes, and then these dark Jedi interbred with the indigenous people until most of the reptilianness was out of them, and the modern Sith people, at least in the ancient Republic, were these hybrid dark side Jedi, and and they had all gained this dark Jedi power, and they came to make war on the Republic.
Okay.
And that's when the first Sith War happened, and the Sith lost.
Correct.
And they were almost completely wiped out. And the Sith as a race no longer exist by the time you meet Darth Vader.
Okay.
Instead, it's just the legacy of their teachings that still exist.
Correct. Okay. Very good. Appreciate that.
And it's the combination of the original Jedi dark side with the primal things that they encountered on the Sith world.
Absolutely. Excellent, man. So the word Sith, you're going to find, is based on the prototype, the Kemetan or Egyptian prototype of a nature, not a god. A nature, we get the word nature from that. And it's the energetic signature of a thing that was anthropomorphized, I think I'm saying that right, or I'll use the word personified to teach children and individuals that could not grasp these elemental natural energies on a higher level. So they caricaturized them. So and created stories in terms of how they interact, what their nature is. Again, the concept of a demon did not exist in the ancient mind. You saw the chronological development, the etymological development. We just went over that. So, and then we saw how the Hebrew writers earlier went back and implanted this distorted idea of a demon in the scriptures. So in the Western world, as Bible believers, we all come out thinking, we come out of these institutions thinking that the ancient people worshiped idols and demons. Nothing could be further from the truth. And when you just heard the Wayland recite the fact that was close, that is very close to the history, that there was no schism, that the knowledge of good and evil was something that was common until a schism, for whatever reason, happened. And we're going to understand what that is when we look at these kalpas of time, when we look at the ebb and flow from chaos to order, from chaos, which is the original state of things, to order. The natural evolution, the natural ebb and flow, the natural wave movement or clock movement that moves you from chaos to order, from chaos to order. So in the Egyptian tale, Set is the Netcher, or the god of the Netcher of the desert, storms, disorder, violence, and foreigners in ancient Egyptian religion. And it wasn't Egyptian religion, it was Egyptian science, or it was the uh, mythology. It was science put into mythology and mythological caricatures. In ancient Greek, the god's name is given as Seth. Set is not, however, a god to be ignored or avoided. He has a positive role where he is employed by Ra in his solar boat to repel Apep, the serpent of chaos. Set had a vital role as a reconciled combatant. This is an energy, a balancing energy, a balancing energy. Just like positive is the balancing energy to negative, and negative the balancing energy to positive. There is not one that is good, not one that is evil. But if you're going to run the car, they're both. If you're going to run your car off a battery, they're both good. And when one is not attached, your car don't run. So you need that positive and negative polarity to start your car. So they were talking about elemental energy. Set was the lord of the red desert or land, where he was a balance to Horus. Horus's role as the lord of the black soil and land. These colors, red and black, are very profound and very important. They're very important. And you're going to have to, in order to understand all of the symbols when they appear in the ancient times and when they appear in modern times, you're going to have to understand these things. And we're going to have to remove it from any type of racial connotation, because the aspect of race was not an aspect, it was not a concept when these things were developed. In Egyptian mythology, Set is portrayed as the usurper who killed and mutilated his own brother Osiris. Osiris's wife Isis reassembled, remembered Osiris. And the reason I have this there, because this reassembling is going to take place. It's a step in the process. In this mythology, they were encoding our method of return. Humans think intellectually, and they think rationally, and they think in terms of logic. That is the dominant program in that matrix. Divine beings have a connection that is irrational, appears to be irrational in that matrix, but that's the only matrix we can talk from. And intellectual knowledge is one thing, but once you go inside, you start to reconnect and reassemble things, and you begin remembering things. remembering things. And it is not a function of intellectual knowledge and memory. It is a function of intuition and inspiration and revelation. And you don't have to require proof or confirmation outside of yourself. It's an inner knowing when you remember something. So Isis reassembles or remembers Osiris' corpse and resurrects him long enough to conceive his son, the heir Horus. And Horus is actually Heru, as we go down, the prototype of any hero that you're going to see in a story. Horus, Heru, etymologically connects to the word hero. That's why we have the word hero. And this, the ancient Egyptian stories, myths, tales, are actually formulas, very powerful formulas. And they evolve through time, culture, etc. And although the names change, the formulas remain intact. This is what Waylon and I were talking about earlier. And what I was saying is that any story that you see, especially the stories that have become popular now, Star Wars, the action adventure stories, Star Wars, Transformers,
Marvel.
anything by Marvel. You can trace these caricatures back to the ancient prototypes, and they work these formulas to get an effect. And now this stuff, through neurocinematics, they are honing the science of these things. But the thing that I'm finding out is that they cannot, they have to include the original, but they have to get as close as possible now to the original prototypes, because these things are not just happening and occurring on the silver screen. They're happening and occurring in reality right now. So let's get to the definition of hero. Well, we'll start here. Heru-Ur, Horus the Elder, was one of the oldest gods of ancient Egypt. He was a sky god whose face was visualized as the face of a sun. And if you know your Bible, you know his face shined as the sun. Every time you see that, it's talking about Heru, or the hero, Horus the Elder, not Jesus, not any of these other Bible characters. The names can change, but again, the characteristics won't change. As a result, his name Heru was sometimes translated as face rather than distant one. And every time in the Bible you see somebody's face shining, or you see these characters portrayed with the halo, the sunburst, and all that kind of stuff, it is actually a variation of this particular element. primal element, and was sometimes modified to Herut, sky. He absorbed a number of local gods, including Nekini, a hawk god. So again, that hawk is going to be important. The aspect of the hawk, and the where, the god of light. And that is simply a construction of the Hebrew word or, meaning light, known as the Great One. And we see or in Horus, another name for Heru. We see that word Hor, or, Great One, whose eyes were the sun and the moon, to become the patron of Nekhen, and later the patron god of the pharaohs. He was originally considered to be the counterpart and enemy of Set. While Horus represented Lower Egypt, Set represented Upper Egypt. As above, so below. Everything is known through its opposite. So again, when we see this upper and lower, when we see red and black, we have to understand, when you think of red and black, you should think of the checkerboard and the checker pieces. Why is one red? Why is one black? You would think one would be black and one would be white. But in that particular matrix, it should be red and black. And people are worried about Ouija boards, Waylon. And they will sit up and play checkers all day. And that, not that there's anything evil in any of those. I mean, all is mind.
Well, and it's funny because the reason why people are afraid of Ouija boards is because of the actual science behind what Ouija boards do.
It's a formula being worked. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Because all this internal speaking that you're doing, about how everything is within us.
Correct.
And when you use a Ouija board, usually someone who has it has the most domineering personality.
Correct.
Okay. And whoever has the most domineering personality when the Ouija board's used is whose subconscious is being contacted.
Correct.
Through the Ouija board. And it actually should be pronounced Ouija because it's supposed to mean yes, yes.
Correct.
In French and German.
Correct.
And the science behind it is basically there's a way that you touch this the spenulum, the little eye,
correct,
without actually touching it, where it doesn't register into your brain that you are making physical contact.
Correct.
And as that happens and you ask questions, the internal monologue or the demon within you begins telling you what you're asking.
Correct.
And all the knowledge that you're tapping into is stuff you already know.
Absolutely. And then you amaze yourself, or you scare yourself.
Right. And in a sense, with the way the word demon is used modernly, it's still correctly interpreted.
Correct.
With the Ouija board.
Absolutely correct.
So, and I've known about this for a long time, and I've told people they're like, oh, Ouija board is scary. I'm like, they're not as scary. You think they're scary, but they're not scary for what you think, because you're talking to yourself. And when some of the things that come out of there, and you think, oh, that's scary stuff, well, you're making it.
That's correct. Absolutely correct. Excellent, Wellen. Thank you.
No problem.
Let's go into the definition, the modern definition, rather, relatively modern, late 14th century of hero, of the word hero. And this is going to lead us into really what the body of this class series is going to entail. Late 14th century, man of superhuman strength, and I should have and or physical courage. Man of superhuman strength and or physical courage. Let me tell you something. Once you see something that is superhuman, the person that demonstrated it, even if they could only do it once, like a mother lifting up their child trapped under uh, a car in a crash, lifting up the car with one arm to get the, once you see something superhuman, you've seen something divine. You've seen something that in the truest sense is demonic or angelic or spiritual. And we're going to break down this word super as well. And again, that's going to lead us further into the discussion. From the Latin hieros, hero, a demigod, an illustrious man. Greek heros, demigod, variant similar to variant singular of that of which is hero. Now, here they go into the BS portion of this is of uncertain origin. But again, we've just demonstrated the origin. Originally, defender, protector. Defender, protector. Remember that a demon was a tutelary spirit, meaning protective spirit, a defender or protector. This is going to get us into the Hebrew language again and thus into the Bible. All right? Defender or protector. And from the PIE root, ser, S-E-R, to watch over, protect, observe. And then I say, see the Hebrew word nachash, primitive root of serpent, meaning to diligently observe or what? To watch over in terms of being a tutelary spirit. The serpent, we're going to find out, as well as the Adam and Eve character, serve as different aspects of the person. And it was the serpent that diligently observed over Adam and Eve and told them, you shall not surely die.
Mm.
We're going to leave that there. And the word nachash, go ahead.
Well, see, this is also related to your Hell Knight, and I don't know if you're going to get to this.
We're going to get to it, but it's going to take a while. But go ahead. Go ahead.
In most places with royalty, there are still knights.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. And you're given the term knight as a title for various reasons. It's not just combat. I mean, we've got Elton John is a knight.
Correct. Right.
Okay. So, and when you become knighted, you get the title Sir.
Absolutely. You right on it, man. You right on it. And there's our Sir right there. See, all of this stuff is going to be revealed through the language. Even if they try to tell us it's uncertain, it's unknown, it's not connected. Nah, we're not going to pay attention to that.
And on top of that, the most powerful order of knights are the Knights of the Dragon.
Absolutely. We're going to understand why, man. We're going to
So
walk
that's where
right.
Dracula comes from.
We're going to walk right through this very carefully. It's going to be so apparent to you. And you're going to see how the wool and the world was pulled right down over your eyes so that you couldn't see. Meaning, man who exhibits great bravery in any course of action is from the 1660s in English. Sense of chief male character in a play or a story, etc., was recorded in the 1690s. So these characters now moving from the the culture of ancient Kemet to being recorded on the walls, engraved on the walls, and taken from there and incorporated in other cultures, painting, in their art, in their stories, in their literature, and then later cartoons, later up on the silver screen, on the stage. So we're seeing it here in the sense of chief male character in a play, story, etc., first recorded in the 1690s. Hero worship is from 1713. So the idea of worshiping another so-called god or another or demon worship didn't develop fully into the language until 1713. And it was in reference to what? Ancient cults and mystery systems. So I'm walking us through this so that you can know beyond a shadow of a doubt the chronological development of these symbols and signs and characters and caricatures and signals so that we understand that there's, most people are scared of what is unknown, what is hidden, but not, we're bringing it out into from the darkness to what? Into the light and revealing these things of living men by the 1830s. And these are going to be very important dates. In Homer of the Greeks before Troy, then a comparative term used of warriors generally, also of all free men in the heroic age. In classical mythology, at least from the time of Hesiod, 8th century before the Common Era, man born from a god and a mortal, especially one. Now, again, this goes back to the Sith, uh, Waylon, inhabiting this small area of planets and having intercourse with indigenous people. All right, that portion of Star Wars. So, and then at the time of Darth Vader, you said that the Sith really no longer existed, but that connection was there.
Yeah,
Chronologically, genetically correct.
yes, that basically their teachings live on without
Correct.
them living on,
Got you.
and
Got you.
thus the modern Sith are the spiritual descendants of those ancient Jedi hybrids.
Now, how would you tell that? Do a DNA test? It was their ability.
My guess is by seeing who exhibits the power.
Absolutely. And this was the question throughout Star Wars. Could not who you said you were who you were by virtue of the fact that you could demonstrate the power. That
Right.
you could tap into either the light side or the dark side, or in the case of what is the character that can tap into both? The Samuel L. Jackson?
Yes, Mace Windu.
Mace Windu. He can tap into both, correct?
Yes.
All
And I
right.
think that that's why he's also the, African one as well.
Absolutely. See, they trying to keep it real a little bit. So now we're going to get into our discussion of death, and this is going to lead us into our what further into what uh, is referred to as this Hell Knight character. All right. So when again, this is cut and pasted directly from the online etymological dictionary. And as you see, as it evolves, it evolves into the term dathus, doth, and doth, da'ath, which is the Hebrew word for knowledge that directly relates to the knowledge of good and evil. But in order to inherit this knowledge, you're going to find out that a human cannot do it. A human cannot do it. Only a divine being can know that knowledge. So we'll skip ahead. We look at the word die, and it's related to the word mortal. So one of the things we said, you would have to change your thinking. So when you're born as a mortal. Mortal is related to dying, not being born. So we have to realize that we are dead. If we weren't, why are we attempting to become conscious after so long being quote unquote alive? You have to change your thinking to understand this, to understand any of the ancient documents. And the reason that we want to understand and ascertain those things is to tap into the power of that and those ancient signals, those ancient signs, those ancient sigils. But if you're walking around thinking that you are alive, you will never do it.
And this is actually kind of funny because this is the overarching stuff that goes on in the Harry Potter series.
Absolutely.
Obviously Harry Potter, is the hero's journey.
Correct.
Just retold 7 times through this kid's life.
Correct.
But the main adversary is Voldemort.
Correct.
And Voldemort is French.
Correct.
Which means to flee from death.
Correct.
And so throughout the whole movie, throughout the whole books, everything, Voldemort is trying to cheat death. He's trying to avoid death. He fears death.
Correct.
And it's not until, the last book where Harry dies and he meets Dumbledore, in the Beyond or wherever you want to call it. And then he's like, well, you've got a choice. You either can stay here and choose to have the knowledge that you have, or you go back and you can save everybody with the knowledge you have. and Harry opts to return, and that's what gives him the power to defeat Voldemort, because Voldemort's, unwilling to take that step to grasp the knowledge of death.
Correct.
Where Harry cheats it as a child, experiences it as a young adult, and then gives him the power to defeat Voldemort. And the whole reason why Voldemort can never achieve the power that he seeks is because he is actually afraid of it.
He refuses to die. Man, this is a perfect entree into what is going to be the last about 45 minutes of the class. So we have to understand that being in this realm, and we're going to let the ancients prove this over and over and over and over again in their symbolism, in their tales, in their stories, in their mythologies. This is not the place of the living. Mortal, there is nothing positive. There is no positive connotation to the word mortal, human, or person. We're going to look at all of those words on multiple levels, especially this word mortal. Mortal means a human being subject to death, and you become subject to death immediately once you enter this realm, often contrasted with divine being. Now, we have to take a look at the Jesus character and the Christ character. Some concepts, personages that each one of us is familiar with in the West. Jesus was the human aspect of that person, subject to death, subject to weakness, subject to temptation. The Christ energy was the divine aspect of the person, but those two could not exist at the same time. When he was born, he was wrapped in grave clothes to indicate swaddling clothes, to what they wrap dead folks in. And understand, the Hebrews did not originate that, mummifying bodies. That was an Egyptian tale. Tells you right there. Swaddling clothes, that was how the Kemetans prepared the bodies, not the Hebrews. Because all you got to do is go to modern anthropology and Egyptology and to see that the preserved bodies are all coming from Kemet and wrapped in that certain way. But we digress. So the human aspect in that tale, in that mythology of Jesus, he was at a young age wrapped in swaddling clothes so that it was symbolized that he was dead already. That mortal means that you were dead even though you were born. The contrast was the Christ figure or energy. And the human aspect had to die in order for the divine aspect, the Christ aspect, to rise. All right? So now we're going to go into the understanding of the word mortal, meaning deadly, doomed to die, destined to die, deserving death, subject to death, human, from mors, genitive of mortis, meaning death. Now, these things were codified. All of these things were codified. These symbols were codified in the tarot cards. But since those, we consider, we'll pick up a deck of cards and play Tunk and play Bid Whist and play War and play poker or whatever games that we play. That card deck is all right. But we won't go near a tarot deck. But we have we don't have any understanding that the one came first, and the one that we play with is based on the one that came first, which is the tarot deck. And the playing cards, when this stuff was demonized and outlawed because of the personal power and personal empowering aspect, they developed the modern day playing cards as a playoff. And they developed these little games so that they understood, again, the hiding, Waylon, of the original symbols for another purpose. Not for an evil purpose, but for a purpose. So they were saying, oh, we're just playing a card game. But when the religious or the order keepers would go away, they're using those for divination and for the power purposes of those things. And basically, it was not to contact demons or anything like that. We keep saying that it had no negative connotation, but they were using these things much as my wife and I use them to tap into our own self-conscious and to understand those inward qualities, tap into those energies so that we might demonstrate the power in our lives. So, we're going to go back to the story in the Bible because it tells the story of the death card. The one in the middle says memento mori, which means remember that you are dead. But we're going to deal with that one a little later. Hopefully we can get to it before the end of time today. But we want to understand this term, thou shalt surely die. All right. And I have it here in, and this thing keeps changing around. Hold on one second. I gotta. Yeah, it keeps changing around. Hold on. Okay, now it's right. It's the word mut tamut. I'm sorry, mot tamut. Mot tamut. All right. And the word translated as die is the word mut or mut. It means to die, to kill, to have one executed, to die as a penalty, to be put to death. In the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible, Jeff A. Benner defines the parent root of the word mut in this way. The pictograph mem is a picture of water representing chaos. So if you remember the beginning story of the Bible, Genesis 1, that there was darkness on the face of the deep, darkness on the water. So That is the term chaos. The tav, or the X, or the cross symbol, is pictured of two cross sticks representing a mark or a sign. Combined, these mean chaos mark, the length of time that something exists and ends. The length of time that something exists and ends. This has a larger meaning as we go forward, a huge meaning as we go forward. Chaos being the first principle, the first state of all existence and energy. It exists in chaos until it is organized, until it is ordered into something that we call something that exists, whatever it is. And just think of getting a model car in a box, or going to the furniture store, and your desk or uh, desk chair or bookshelf being disassembled in a chaotic order. All right. It's in there, but it hasn't been assembled yet. So in English, mute or moot is a dead point, meaning mortal. So once you incarnate, you have actually reached not a live point, but a dead point, with the additional R and L, meaning mortal, or the word moot. The word mate comes from the word moot, and checkmate, meaning the king is dead. Mate, thus matter, material. We get the word mate, thus matter. So when you materialize, you become dead. The actual live aspect of something is chaotic before it is formed. You must change your thinking. You must change your thinking. So we see this word being connected to Marta, or mortal man, as opposed to amarta, immortal. And what did they do? They added an aleph or an A to the front of it. We're going to run across this again. See, they're spelling, they're casting a spell with characters, letters. These things are powers, and they mean something. They carry meaning, and they carry power, and they carry energy. So we must define this energy correctly, accurately. The word person, from the word personae, human being, and it means a part in a drama, an assumed character, not the real character, an assumed character, originally masked false face, such as those of wood or clay worn by the actors. Personare, to sound through, that is the mask as something spoken through and perhaps amplifying the voice. We're going to get into this a little further and a little deeper, but we want to connect this person to Persephone, the wife of Hades, queen of the netherworld. See, we don't understand that when we incarnated, we entered into the netherworld. And we're going to go through that word nether as well. And all it's going to do is to clarify and to give credence to everything that we've said thus far. Netherworld is the underworld of the dead. hell. So when you became a person, you landed in hell, the underworld. And then we go into this aspect of occult, that which is clandestine, hidden, secret, the knowledge of the hidden. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Now, this is Carl Jung again. And what the chaos theory that they're coming up, along with the string theory and quantum physics and quantum mechanics, is proving all of this. This was not. This was deep science. This is our science. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your words to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. The parable is that third level Daresh that we talked about. Pashat, Ramez, Daresh, Sod, the secret or the hidden aspect. In a parable, I will utter dark sayings of old, which ye have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. It's talking about the ancestors here. You already know it. You've already heard it through your ancestors. So you must remember it. These dark sayings, these parables are hints. They're moedim, but you have to be able to recognize them. They're prearranged signs and signals that are designed to uh, initiate and activate things that you already know. So that, and this is the aspect of the power that we're talking about. So it won't be me telling you, it'll be you hearing these things and you telling you. I will give thee treasures of darkness and hidden riches in secret places, not in the place above ground are not secret places. The tree above ground, everyone has access to that fruit. Everyone has access to that. But everyone does not have access, nor do they have knowledge of the root system and the fruit that is there. Then spake Solomon, the Lord said that he would dwell where? Not just in darkness, in thick darkness. In thick darkness. Everyone's looking to the light, looking outside of themselves. The thick darkness is within you. Hell, again, is the netherworld, the underworld. The English word may be a part of the Norse mythology, hail from the Proto-Germanic Helija, one who covers up or hides. In the Norse mythology, the name of Loki's daughter who rules the evil dead. In Nephilim, the lowest of all worlds, Nephil, mist. We're going to trace that to the Hebrew. Nephal, a pagan, the Nephilim, a pagan concept and word fitted into a Christian idiom, stolen, fitted in there to demonize it. Theurgy, the operation of the gods. Listen, there are two different types of magic according to Giovanni Pico della Mirandola's Apology, completely opposite of each other, light and dark side, good and evil. The first is Goetia, black magic, relied upon an alliance with evil spirits, that is demons. All that means is you connect with your ancestors who have been demonized. That is the quickest way for people that are connected tribally, genetically, to the ancestors to connect to those ancient energies and powers. The second is theurgy, divine magic reliant upon an alliance with divine spirits. That's angels, archangels, they're the same thing when we look at the definition. Theurgy translates to the science of the art of divine works and is the practical aspect of the hermetic art of alchemy. Furthermore, alchemy is seen as the key, the theurgy, the ultimate goal of which uh, is to become united with higher counterparts, ancestors, leading to the attainment of divine consciousness. Next thing we're going to do, next class, we're going to skip it from now, but we're going to decode a movie for you. And that movie is the movie Get Out. All right. I thought it was brilliant. It had all of the signs in there. It talked about the sunken place, and they did it so brilliantly. And we're going to talk about what this sunken place is, referred to as Malkut in the Hebrew. And if you fail to have knowledge if you watched the movie and did not have knowledge of the tarot card of the Queen of Cups, you did not know who Missy Armitage was. And you was just watching another black movie and were entertained by it and was not educated by it, was not enlightened by it. She represented the Queen of Cups. And when we watched this movie, Dana and I was able to decode it right away that next day. And understand this, I decoded it. This is what I meant to say. I decoded the entire movie before I even watched it. I decoded the entire movie before I even watched it. I just looked at the pictures. Oh, she looks just like, no, they got her pose just like the Queen of Cups right here. Exactly like it. Leg crossed over. Well, she's got her right leg crossed over her left. She's got her left leg crossed over her right, but it's unmistakable. And the cup was so significant. And then I went and watched the movie, and then because these things are inside of me, they're not outside of me in a movie. Didn't need to watch the movie to decode it. I put this together without watching the movie, just going in looking at scenes from the movie. And we'll go ahead.
And that's why the Oracle in the Matrix has the teacup.
Absolutely. It was just repeated. It's just repeated. So eventually, again, here, we'll fast forward. And it's really amazing that they used James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader. Because as we go through and decode the movie, we're going to look at actually his film roles that he played. And James Earl Jones, you're going to see him coming up in so many roles that are significant to the Hell Knight. Thulsa Doom in the here we go in the Conan series. We're going to decode Django Unchained. And again, we're just getting to the story of the Death Terror, but it's necessary. Django Unchained and the real Black Knight on the horse. This particular, the four horsemen of the apocalypse here was used in the X-Men to uh, decode one of the main characters in the film. They actually used this, and I hadn't even seen the film before. But all of this stuff, I'm just saying that to say that it is consistent. It is consistent. There's the Hell Knight again, Denzel Washington. It's consistent in these movies. There's the Hell Knight again on the horse. And we're gonna tie these things into the ancient symbolism and really decode and demystify everything. The things, see, we're just getting to memento mori and ego death, but we're going to get into all of this. The story American Gods, man, I recommend that. I
It's
recommend
awesome.
it. It is awesome. And we're going to demystify the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and understand that the death that Adam and Eve went through, the death of Jesus Christ and the raising, it was ego death. But we have not connected psychology, Jungian psychology with the occult because no one is telling us that this was derived, that so-called science was derived from 7 sermons of dead, disembodied individuals that dictated the science to them, the ancient science. And it's all ancient science. It's all ancient science. This is your stuff. It is not off. It's been outlawed, but it's nothing harmful in it. The only demon you're going to encounter is your dark side. So we're going to finish up here. We're going to open the floor up for questions and comments. I hope everything was clear. Hope we didn't confuse anybody. But we're endeavoring to take our time and as much time as we want to make these things clear. The as you see, the study notes are laid out in a very coherent way to walk you through it, through word etymologies that don't lie, that tell the truth. These are the other, they're trying to be the Dark Knights, the Ku Klux Klan, but they can't. And even they call themselves the White Knights. But that's an image, that's our stuff that has terrified, that has terrified us. And because they have worked spells on us. We're gonna break down the Waylon and I had a tremendously enlightening conversation of the symbol of the X and the O and the square. And we'll get to that. We won't spoil it, but we're gonna walk you through that, and we're gonna start with Darth Vader, the prototypical Dark Knight, the one that you show that everyone knows. So this is the new so-called God of the new nature, the embodiment of that energy. And look, you can tap into it. You can tap into it. This is an aspect of the shadow person, that dark night, that hell night. And you're going to find out it is all your science. It is all stuff that you're going to know internally. Once you hit those symbols that are familiar, that are set, that are prearranged. and it'll open up a world for you. Again, I guess we'll start at the movie Get Out and decode that next week. But again, we open it up for questions. Christine, Nikki, Dana, Randy.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Where I know you recommended one book, the Lubitz. I know his last name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't have his book, but I have one of his wife's book. I think that was his wife. I can't.
Yeah.
It's in my office right now. I don't. I didn't get up and get it. But it's so much information, and I want to know where could I even begin to, do you have any kind of recommendation on where I can begin to even gather this knowledge for myself?
Out. Wow. Yes. I'll,
Honestly,
no.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sometimes I've gotten to a place where I used to do a lot of reading, studying, and whatnot, and as I got older and just some experiences that I've had that I won't go into deep in depth here, it just got me to the point where everything you already know everything, and I don't personally want to get into a place where I had kind of stopped because I didn't want to get into a place where I was, like you said earlier, was so focused on just getting information, obtaining knowledge,
Right.
and just obtaining knowledge. And I got to a place where I kind of have gotten so involved with myself and knowledge of myself
Right.
that I don't know that I necessarily need to. I'm not saying don't do these kind of classes. I'm just talking about for my own personal self,
Correct.
constantly read and study this information when it's already within. I guess I just got to a place where it's just like just um in just being. And I will say, I don't think anybody else knows me on here except for you, Itai. A lot of some
And
of the oh, okay. Some of the I got into that mode of thinking. Well, I kind of did before, but I had an experience for about a year. I experimented with some psilocybin mushrooms,
uh-huh.
and wow, it's just kind of like the being of you is, I learned that no, there is no duality. There
Correct.
is none.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Well,
People, I'm enlightened. It's like, no, you
you
embrace.
experienced it.
Right, I did. I
Right.
mean, I literally experienced it in my being. And, I'm not the whole love and light thing. It's like, no, you embrace both the light and the dark. And I don't have anything particular thing that I follow or, any
Right.
kind of
Right.
philosophy, religious thing or anything like that. Because I used to listen to Bobby Hemmett a lot, and he always would say the best, people want to do spell stuff. This best thing comes from you. And I found that to be true for myself. It's not always easy to tap into, I
Correct.
will say, because I don't necessarily know how to tap into it, but I'm not interested in following anybody's particular mode of doing it because that
Me
was
either.
their mode of doing it. You understand what I'm
That's
saying?
correct.
That came from them. But at the same, so a lot of it just came to me in one of my journeys. I was supposed to, I was not supposed to be talking to anyone, but I had a sitter with me. I couldn't help myself. And I just told her, everything is within. You already know,
That's
all
correct.
the books and all of that stuff. You don't, you know, and really I'm telling her, but it was for me. You
Right.
don't need that. But that my 3D self, like I like to say, um, I just like this information is so rich because there's still that battle from my indoctrination, versus where I'm at now. You get what
Correct.
I'm saying?
Correct.
So
I
sometimes,
that I'm
like
on. Right.
I do want the knowledge at hand.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Correct.
Uh, no, so I don't know. Just
Well,
your thoughts.
what we're gonna get into this to what I would recommend for everyone is to start with Bobby Hemmett. Is to
Yeah,
start with
yeah,
Bobby Hemmett because the one thing that he does is give resource information.
yeah.
He's a great teacher, but here's the thing, and this might surprise you. This comes down to rhythm. That's what it comes down to. It comes down to harmonizing and getting in rhythm with yourself. You kind of explained it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like tuning into a radio frequency. Sometimes books will do it for me, sometimes listening to a video, sometimes playing
Yeah.
funkadelic music,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes Jimi Hendrix, listening to jazz and stuff like that. And then to what Zimra and I have done, we use a baseline of knowledge, of ancient knowledge, but we use our imaginations
Mm.
Yes.
mostly because that's our most we've understood that that's our most powerful tool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it
And
takes a
that's
while to get there.
yeah. I had came to that place too because someone, you know, a friend, a former friend, kept wanting me to take her to, you know, mystic bookstores to get this, that, and other. I kept trying to tell her it's not the tools.
Right.
You you don't you honestly don't need any of that. Now this is my personal okay, I'm not, you know, my
Correct.
personal opinion.
I
The
know.
power,
I know. You don't have to
okay,
say that. Right. Some
okay.
people might need
The
that.
power is right. I had to get to that place too. You
Correct.
know, I had to
Correct.
learn two things are for you and where you're at, Nikki.
Absolutely.
Not, you know, and I kept telling her the power is within you. And two more things. Sometimes it bothers me because I don't necessarily see it manifest in the time that I would like to. And it makes me think it ain't manifesting at all. It's like, you know, wait a minute. You know
Hey,
what I'm saying? You
but,
know,
but
and but
that's where the frustration comes in to everybody. But you
right.
know what the key is?
Hmm.
You know what the key is?
What's that?
To
Hmm.
just to know that what you did was right,
Right. Okay.
whatever it was, and just become
Move on.
unattached to the outcome.
You are so right.
Become
Even like, you
unattached
know,
because it'll happen.
right. When you were talking
Leave
about
it
the
alone. Right.
right, the tarot cards, for example, is like I'm able to read, but I do intuitively. And
Correct.
it's just like I refuse to pick up a card because it for me it inhibits me. You know, it's
Correct.
like no, it's too confining. I can't, you
Right.
know. And also, it's so funny when you all were talking about the Ouija board.
Right.
I was sitting here thinking to myself, I don't care what they say, I ain't fucking around with no Ouija board. But you know what hit me? You know what hit me each time?
What's
It
that?
came, Nikki, you mess around with a pendulum every day, all day long. It's the exact same thing. I
Right.
said, oh my gosh, check
That's
that
right.
out. Exact same thing. I got like three of them, you know, that I done made and put together.
You
Yeah,
know,
but it's that indoctrination. And I still, I even found even greater for me as time has gone on. I even found there are uses still spiritually, even in Christianity. Don't throw it all away. You
Absolutely,
understand what I'm
absolutely
saying?
correct. Right.
Embrace it all.
Right.
and I think that, you know, what Keith said about the imagination is so pinnacle because, you know, I have a very strange story because I've been using my imagination like crazy ever since I was a little child because I had a unique situation where I'm an only child, but I have like 8 other siblings
Okay.
from various other marriages. But my
Okay.
parents only had one child, and I was the only child like that was there a lot by myself.
Mhm.
So and I was able to entertain myself a lot as a kid, and I spent a lot of time in my head as a child.
Hmm.
And then I found Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a lot of negative
Oh yeah.
connotation with Dungeons and Dragons, and I was
Give
brought up
me
Christian,
confess.
and and but then I found out, once I started making friends, once I started doing this, because you have to have friends to play this game. So then I became, socialized. And then once I became socialized, all these guys were like, hey, you have a really good imagination. We want you to run the game.
Hmm.
And I was about 14 or 15 then. I'm 40 now.
Hmm.
And through Dungeons and Dragons is how I started getting into a lot of this esoteric knowledge, which is probably why they didn't want me to play it.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And I started forsaking the books, because the books even tell you, if you read them, they're just a guideline. Do what you want to do with this game. It's to have fun. So I just started making up my own worlds and my own stories, instead of using these books as a guide so much.
Mm.
And as I aged, and I began looking, deeper into things and deeper into things, because, I make connections, I see things, and I'm like, wow, that reminds me of this, or this reminds me of that. And then I came across, Gnosticism, I don't know, maybe when I was 30, between 28 and 30. So I'd already been, being a dungeon master for 15 years and telling stories. And I never had much other religious input other than Baptist and Pentecostal Christianity.
Yeah.
And then whatever, religious connotations I picked up from whatever novels or Dungeons and Dragons, and I made up this story, right? And then I learned about Gnosticism about 15 years later, and found out that I had created a world, and
Yeah.
I had created all of this story and this history and these tales for other people to interact with me with. And I had basically told the story, the Gnostic story of a false creator, the angels, the archon, or the aeons, the archons, but I had them all with different names.
Mm.
And then when I came across Gnosticism and I started reading the cosmology of Gnosticism, and I was like, wow, this sounds like what I made up.
Yeah.
I made this up. Where did this come from? I made this up. And then I'm like, well, oh, wow, I read this. This is, one of the most ancient religions. Well, that's impossible. I made this up. I just didn't use these names. And then that sent me into a whole new spiral of trying to figure out what was going on inside my head if I was telling stories that I thought were mine, and apparently I was just copying ancient tales that I had never heard of.
Right.
That's the power of imagination, man.
Yeah, I grew up Christian too. But went to Baptist schools, grew up Pentecostal. So yeah, I know about the Dungeons and Dragons, all of that. We were told all of that is so evil. But
Right,
my daughter now, she's into she loves Harry Potter. She loves all of that stuff.
right,
And I find it so interesting because I would not dare tell her. You understand what I'm saying?
right.
That, oh, that's evil, this, that, and other. But because of how I was raised in that indoctrination, I still have that slight fear. And it's like, shut up, Nikki. Just let her read.
That,
She knows who she is. Oh my gosh. And I made a mistake one time in a bookstore, and she picked up some book, and I said, and I couldn't help it, because I taught religious studies. And it
uh-huh.
was about this God. I can't remember the name of the God, and that one of my students was telling us about, and how bad this, what happened to her friends when they got involved in this with this thing. And I told her, this child looked at me. She's only 11, and she said, "Ma, I never would have known that had you not told me." You
Wow.
know, it was so powerful the way she
Right,
said that. Like, you don't need to tell me that.
right.
Let me read. Let me discover. Let me explore. But
Correct.
nevertheless, I had to throw that in there. Yeah.
And you're right, because my mom, real fundamentalist, for lack of a better way of saying it, Bible thumper, like literalist, doesn't believe in ghosts, doesn't believe in dinosaurs, all sorts of things, and this woman, to her dying day, will tell you that the best thing she ever did for me was buy me Dungeons and Dragons books, because it unlocked so much of because before that I was an introvert.
Okay.
And through Dungeons and Dragons, I have become an extrovert, and I'm so extroverted it annoys people now.
Oh.
I mean, just tell Keith, like, he mentioned one thing to me, and then he couldn't get me to shut up.
that was a good thing.
I mean, it was good because I found like-mindedness and found people who when I speak and they get kind of what I'm saying, instead of being like, what, wait, what? And all of it is through Dungeons and Dragons, comic books, Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, I see Star Wars, and I can apply the plot of Star Wars to probably 50, 60 things that have happened to me in my life, and each one of them, if I look back on them, depending on how my choices, I either overcame them or whatnot. It was each time you have a problem, you're on the hero's journey.
Correct.
You are Luke Skywalker.
That's so true.
There's something that takes you out of your ordinary element, and then forces you to have to deal with it. You have to overcome the darkness, make it part of yourself, win through to the day. Then that becomes normal life again. That thing you have added to yourself that you have overcome now is normally part of you, and then a new thing happens.
Right. And that's the power of experience, man. That's guided by knowledge and wisdom. And you know what the fun part is going to be is to as we move forward is to kind of take and when I wrote this, I didn't even know this was going to happen. Kind of take Waylon's journey from comic books and fantasy novels and all that kind of stuff, graphic novels and stuff like that, action adventure stories, and make the connection with these ancient powers, with these ancient energies, and show how we can use this in modern life, and get to the same place. It doesn't have to be, and it's even more powerful for me from going from that angle, going from Superman and Darth Vader and Darkseid and the Shadow and all of these characters, because that was big for me growing up as well too. And now to make the connection with something that's supposed to be, you know, super high on the consciousness scale, going back to ancient Kemet, that's the funnest thing in the world to me. And it really just gives credence to the brilliance of all of this. It's up, and I'm saying it's superhuman brilliance. It's otherworldly brilliance to see something
Yeah.
evolve and to uh, uh, migrate through time like this. So I hope
And
everybody.
really boils down to modern shamans to either disperse the information or to interpret the information, because not everyone's a shaman, and not everyone who is a shaman knows they're a shaman.
That's absolutely correct.
And I know that I risk sounding, haughty or whatnot, but that's the only way I can explain how I kept telling all these stories that were ancient religious tales
Correct.
without knowing them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I looked at other like comic book artists and stuff, Jack Kirby in specific, and I've told Keith about this several times, and I was like, how is this even possible unless there's shamans that don't know they're shamans still on the earth to this day, and it's not a dead thing. It's just something we no longer interpret properly. It's demonized, and now it's hidden within our popular culture because the shamans have hidden within it because they are still the creative forces. They're the ones with the highest connection to the source,
Right.
and because they have to get the source out there, they're drawn to make movies and comics and blah blah blah, and that's why I play Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
Right.
And it's a reason that Dungeons and Dragons and all this stuff came into the world at this time. This is something that, and it can't be contained. It can't be held back. This is a power within all of us that hopefully on this time around we can all tap into, because I want to finish whatever work I got to do here, and I don't want to come back. I'm on to the next game. I'm on to the next world. So anybody else? Randy, Christine, anybody? Zemra, anybody have any questions or comments?
Oh, brother, I'm good. I'm good. I'm soaking it all in. I'm good.
Okay, very good. Very good, brother. Glad to have you here, man.
Oh, good to be here. Good to be here. As to, just to make one quick comment, when you talk about all these things, all the knowledge already been in here, in you.
Right.
That I felt that. I pretty much felt that all my life. It's just, beginning to take into to your eyesight, the words and listen to terms, such and so forth. They become live. They're just coming live within me. So, I get it. I get it.
Great.
So,
all right, brother, man. We come a long way, haven't we?
Oh man, yeah. From
13,
from me,
13,
from Baptist to from deep Pentecostal, deep Pentecostal, the casting out of devils and all of that. Okay, so
How about that?
huh? Yeah,
I know about that too. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, me and Pudgy used to double team.
Yeah. We put the double team and we got a brother free to a degree.
Yeah, that's right.
To a degree of freedom. Yeah.
I was thinking about that. Mark Hall, man. You remember him?
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
remember
I'm
that.
talking about.
Yeah. How you doing?
Yeah, man. Somebody else speaking?
No. I was talking to her.
Okay.
I was asking how she was doing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that Christianity and its many compartments, is truth in it all. It just has to be related in the proper context to the enriching of your life.
Okay.
So,
all right.
all good.
All right. If it's nothing else, we're gonna end it right here. And like we always say, we'll be back here, same bad time, same bad channel.
All right. Good night.
All right.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.